everyone. I'm JJ Dixon with the Jacksonville Brotherhood of Police Officers. First of all, happy Black History Month. We are going to be launching a series of videos featuring several of our retired members of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, who are also members of the Brotherhood of Police Officers, who will be sharing in their own words their lived experiences as they were police officers with the Sheriff's Office. And so first up is one of our beloved retired Officer Rita Smith. Hello, Rita.
Rita Smith Campbell. I
was getting to the Campbell. Congratulations. She keeps saying recently, but it has been a couple of years. But we want to congratulate you on your nuptials.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Most of us know her as Rita Smith throughout her time with the Sheriff's Office, but we will definitely honor and recognize that Campbell on the end of it. So welcome, Miss Campbell.
Thank you.
We are going to give you a few minutes to kind of tell us about who you are. I know that you are very modest when it comes to your title, so I will say that she is the first African-American female police officer to be hired in the city of Jacksonville, Florida. So we're honored to have you this morning. Ms. Campbell, if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I was the first, as you said. I don't even know where to start or how to start, but at the time that I came on, I was married, and I have two children, my son, Lazarius McCall, and my daughter, Raquel. She's now married, Smith Brookins. My husband, when I came on, I was a correction officer. I had asked him to help me, especially with the two kids. And he said he would do everything he could to help me become a police officer. However, if I ever became a police officer, I did make it, he would divorce me.
Wow. And
that's exactly what he did. When I was in the academy, I was served my papers for divorce. So it started rough, but God always finished. You know, I have 3 songs that I have. Trouble Don't Last Always by James Cleveland, and I Never Could Have Made It by Marvin Sapp. And the last one is I'm Nowhere Tired by James Cleveland. I'm nowhere tired, because it was a long, rugged road. And it was tough, it was hard, but through God, I made it. As I said, trouble don't last always. And I never could have made it without God.
Amen. Wow, I've been knowing you for a long time, and those were some things that I did not know. And so it just continues to show us just how determined you were to be a servant for our community, and how determined you were to be successful in your personal career path. And so hats off to you for that. I do have a few questions. I know that this will be a conversation. Okay. And so anytime you want to chime in and tell us something, please do that. But I do have a few questions. The first question is, we mentioned that Officer Smith Campbell was the first. What year did you start?
I started in 1976 in the class of 376 at the Academy on Huffman Boulevard. In 1976.
Were there any African-American males in your class?
There were several, but the two that I remembered the most was Leon Broadnax and Thomas Tolliver. If it had not been for those two, I would never have made it. When I felt like giving up, they were there. They called me baby girl. When I was tired, they were so fast that they would run their mile on agility when we had our PT every day. They would run their miles, 4 miles, whatever it was, and they would come back, and each one would grab an arm, and I had some choice words for them. But they continued every day to make sure that I finished my ability, my PT. They were my buddies.
Wow,
Leon Broadnax is deceased now.
Yes.
But Thomas Tolliver is still here, and he's my buddy. He's so sweet.
Well, we hope that Officer Tarver has an opportunity to see this. I'm sure you've shared that with him, but what a tribute that was that you just made. And I meant to bring some Kleenex.
Don't say that on there.
But that was a great tribute. So wow. sometimes I get choked up because to hear these stories, it means so much. So you made it through the academy and you're headed to the streets.
Well, let's get to before I made it to the academy.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's been a tiresome. There was a coworker when I was in corrections. I started in '73. And she was so adamant. She was so adamant that I could not do a black. When at first I failed the PT, Michael Rutledge would have been in the class before me, another class, and Lucille Thurston, and I'll talk about her too. And I failed it. I did not make that class because I could not pass the physical ability. So when she saw that they weren't giving it to me, that I had to get out there diligently every day and try to get over that wall, that was it. We had a 6-foot wall we had to jump over, climb over. And then once I finally passed, and she saw that because she could never get over that wall, that they didn't give it to me. Then she said, Smith, scratching her head, Smith, you think they're going to lower the standard? And I had to show her that I had to make it. I made it through the academy, through all of that. The academy staff ran her crazy. She came, I guess apparently every time she said something, they would tell her to shut up or be quiet or something. But she came to muster with tape on her mouth.
Wow.
And she was actually committed to McClinney. She used to walk up and down 10 as a bag lady because of what they did to her. I don't know where she's at now, whatever happened to her, but I think they tried that with me. But as I said before, never would have made it. Never, if it had not been for God, because they tried me so many times.
My apologies. I know it's a lot, and the intent is not to upset you for sharing those experiences with us. I know that it must be very difficult. We know that just going through the police academy in general is difficult. But when you're the first female or the first African-American female or the first of anything to do anything, it's always going to be a little bit harder and a little bit more pressure on you than on others. So I appreciate you sharing those intimate moments with us. I can only imagine that from the 70s up until now, how many times you've thought about those things and relived those moments. But as you mentioned, we know that God gives us grace. He gives us healing and he allows us to move on, which you obviously have done. Now, let me ask you this. Well, I wanted to talk about you getting to the street. I want to ask you about one of your calls that may have been the funniest or the most memorable. But before we get to that, I want to talk a little bit about this man right here, Anthony Rogers. I just love this picture here of you and Anthony Rogers, and we know that Anthony is he's passed away. Oh, you brought the article. Anthony has passed away. The title of the article from February 1st, 1970.
It had to be 77.
77, it looks like. I can't really read it, but I'm laughing because I guess Anthony signed that.
No, that's my mom. That's my daughter.
Oh, she said, "This is my daughter, Retha." So your mom wrote that.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And it says, "Being a rookie isn't easy," asked Retha Smith. This was an article that was written in 1977. And so Anthony Rogers was your training officer.
He was.
How did that happen?
In the academy, I was labeled a racist. As I said, they tried to get me to leave or to have a nervous breakdown, but it didn't happen. And I was labeled a racist in the academy. And the white officers told the sheriff's office, now get this, they're riding in the police car. They're being paid to work. But the other officers said, my wife won't let me ride another female officer. I can't do it for whatever reason. So they chose Anthony Rogers because everyone else refused to ride with me or to train me. So Anthony Rogers had to train me. I met him actually before, because he said he had to come out and find out who this racist was in the academy. So I met Anthony Rogers prior to my graduating from the academy.
So you and Anthony ended up being the dynamic duo, I imagine.
Oh.
And you rode together through your training, and obviously you made it out of training, even though you had that label on you. And we understand that you had to deal with the public. And so obviously you were able to deal with all of the citizens of Jacksonville, not just one particular race. And you did that for over 40 years. So
yes.
We thank you for your service. Now tell us about, if there is one, because we haven't had this conversation before, but if there is a call that you can remember that just makes you laugh every time you think about it.
I hope it's okay for me to say this.
Don't call the name.
No, I'm not going to call the name. But another, I had, when Rogers finished training me, there was a Pete Middleman. He ended up training me. He was at FAMU getting his doctorate degree. And he trained me because he did not know about the racists, or he didn't care. We were dispatched to a call, and it was a lady that had mental issues. She called us because she said, "I horny now. My husband not touched me for 3 days." And oh God! Me and my partner, we just had to look at each other. And her husband was there. He says, we just. And that would always stick with me.
God.
So, but she asked for the funniest, and that was it. I mean, who else could get something? Call the police because you're horny. Come on. And that stuck with me, and it will always stick with me.
That is funny. That would make you laugh. And I'm sure if there are other police officers watching this, they have their own stories similar to that, that they can tell. We all have one. That is funny. So needless to say, you left her the same way you found her. That is funny. Thank you for sharing that. All right. I want to ask you on a serious note, looking back at your career, and I know you've told us about some people who you were happy to have met and who pushed you to do better. But looking back at your career, who do you think made the biggest impact on your career?
Of course, my Anthony Rogers. I mean, hands down, foot down, whatever. He was it. He was it. He was my training officer. Whenever I went to another beat or anywhere, all the guys basically. If I ever got a call, because another thing too that happened, whenever I got on the radio, they would click their mic to keep me from transmitting. And so the other officers knew it, the black officers. I don't care what zone they were in. They came to make sure that baby girl was all right. They took care of me. I don't care what. They didn't care about getting in trouble. They made sure, they came to make sure. Because the white officers would not come to a call, like a domestic violence, where there would have to be 2 officers responding. They didn't come.
Let me ask you this. Over the years, because we're starting in the 70s, so then you went through the 80s and the 90s, and I think a portion of the 2000s, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Over the years, did you ever see that atmosphere and mentality start to shift a little bit?
Honestly, no. No, I did not. When they finished with me, they started with them. And they continued. Since they could not break me, they went to two other females. One, not calling names, but anyway, one ended up being fired, terminated, and I had to apologize to her because they took her before the Civil Service Board. And she had asked me to be her witness for her. When I was sworn on the stand, they called for recess. And when they came back, I was told all I could say was yes or no. I could not elaborate on anything because they knew that if I was able to speak, that things may have turned out differently. But they spoke to the judge, and that's all I could say was yes or no, and that's it. And I was so hurt because I had told her, I said, I can't go there and speak on your behalf. But if you subpoena me, I will have to go. Because they made sure it was doing business hours and I was working that day. So of course I was subpoenaed, but I could not help. I could not, and that hurt me.
You brought some things with you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to share some of these things with us?
Well, when I came on, they were not ready for police women, officers. They eventually changed it to officers. Here I was a patrolman. I had been a patrolman wearing men clothes, men shoes, men everything. But here's my hat badge, and here's my breast badge. And here it is, I was a patrolman for all those years. Until finally when we did get one. I have here when I was a correctional officer, my picture in 1973 when I became a correctional officer. And I did not bring, about any of my new pictures as a police officer. I didn't bring any of those.
So we know that you went from corrections to the police side of the sheriff's office, and then you went on to be, in the end, a bailiff.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So how many years in total did you serve?
42 years and 2 months.
Mm-hmm. And 2 months.
Can I go back?
Yeah, sure.
I remember when I was married, one of the reasons why I became a police officer was L.B. Scott, a police officer, and Chris Robinson, which will be interviewed later, came to my house one night. And they wanted to know, because the test was being frozen, so they had to hire within. And they were inquiring about my becoming a police officer. And I told them at that time, you can forget about me, because I had taken the test and passed it. I failed the interview. I remember going to him and asking him so I could improve my interview, take it again and do it. I was told, never you mind, you failed it. So that's, and I told them that, but they said there was nothing in my jacket, my personnel file, that I had ever taken the test, much less passed it. But because they were hiring from within, and if they wanted the government money, federal money, they had to hire the minority. And that's how I got on, because they had to hire the minority. And being black and female, I guess I counted twice, the double digit.
If you had to give any advice to young, now I'm just going to say female overall at this point, if you had to give any advice to young female officers, what would that be?
I have been asked before about female, and my main thing is get your education. For one thing, once you have it, they cannot take it away. If you get in this field and you don't like it, you can always bounce back to something. But get your education. Don't take it for granted. Nothing in life is taken for granted. But get your education.
That's really great advice. And because there are so many who initially when they graduate high school do not feel led to go to college. Well, we know now with the sheriff's office, you have to have that a minimum amount of education in order to become a police officer. But the good thing about the sheriff's office here in Jacksonville is that unless something has changed, they will reimburse you when you go to school. So it's a win-win situation. You can take your time, you get an education, and you also get reimbursed, if not in full, at least in a portion for doing that. So I think that's excellent advice. How was we know how the old one felt about you being in law enforcement. How does the new Mr. feel about your past, your background, your history, you being a legend here in the city of Jacksonville?
I don't think they really even think about it. I really don't, and I'm not one who like to mention it. But this new breed is a breed of its own. They believe that everything they got is on their own, that no one paved the way or whatever it is, they did it on their own. But let me go back again to when I came on. 711 Liberty Street was where we had a station till the one was built here on Bay Street. And we used the parking lot where Winn-Dixie is now. I would sit in the car and wait, and I would run up with just a minute to get up those stairs to make it to muster. And because I was tormented, I was called Watermelon Wanda. And his philosophy is, all black folks eat watermelon. I could not, because I was divorced and had 2 children and no child support, I would wear the perfume Jean too. And I was asked, why do you always smell the same? Not that I had an odor, but I could only afford John too, so I stopped wearing that. And then I just wore my afro. And then I was called Brillo Pad. It was always something every day that we would, that they would ridicule me on, just harass me. And as I said, when I got on the radio, when I was on the street, they were writing me up for my radio procedures. And the only reason I could not say HQ and give my number, I had to get everything out at one breath, because if I ever got off that radio, I could not get back on because they would click me. But I was written up because I didn't use the proper radio procedures. And it was always something. We had a meeting with the sheriff, it was Carson at that time. And they wanted to recruit minorities. And we told them, how can we recruit minorities when we ourselves are not happy? They would get on the radio and they use the N-word, running down the street with orange shoes on or tennis shoes or whatever it is. And the N-word was flagrant back then. But they were not getting in trouble. But because I could not give my call number and get everything on the proper radio procedures, I was being written up. I had 2 folders with complaints. I don't know if you see now how I use my eyes and my shoulders. One lady even called the sheriff. She wrote a letter complaint that I arched my eyebrows at her. I was told, remember we had to cross train, and I was in dispatch. Ooh, and there was a lady call, and they would always monitor my phone, my calls, receiving calls coming into the 0500 number, 630-0500 number. And this lady come in and she said, but there's a bunch of ends out there. I said, well, ma'am, what color are the ends? Well, ends are ends and white folks are white folks. So shortly after that phone call, I was called in by the supervisors there. And they told me that I was wrong. I said, well, how am I wrong? You told me to get an accurate description. And I said, ends come in all different colors. And they told me, well, you know what she meant. I said, no, I don't know, because all in comes in all different colors. And you told me to get an accurate description, and that's what I wanted. So they told me I was straddling the fence. They couldn't write me up on that, but I knew they listened to everything, and they did everything they could to discourage me. They wanted me off the department, but again, I never would have made it.
Well, we are so grateful that you did. I know some of this stuff may be challenging, in a way unbelievable for some people to be able to stomach or hear, because sometimes we want to see the world, through a set of lenses that we possess. But the world is the way that it is, and it's not to be seen through one set of lenses because we're all different. And so we're just grateful that you were able to endure all of that. Excuse me. We are grateful that you weren't broken, that you were able to be an asset to our community, that you persevered, and that you still are here and able to give advice to other young women, who will come on the police department behind you. I am grateful for having had the opportunity to meet you, to share in conversation with you, to learn from you. And I'm just thankful that you are willing to share your stories with us. I want to say to those who will see this, that as we have expressed before, this series is about these individuals and their lived experiences, the way that they felt, the way that they saw it, the way that it either helped them or harmed them. This is what this series is about. And so I know that some of this stuff may be hard to hear, but it's necessary. It's often said, if you don't know where you've come from, you're going to have a very difficult time trying to get to where you're going to. So we thank you for sharing with us today. I want to give you an opportunity, if there's anything that you did not share with us that you would like to share. Let's leave on a high note. Let's leave on a high note. I know that in your time with the sheriff's office, you saw and experienced a lot of change. And so there had to be some positive or something good that came from your experiences with the sheriff's office. I know, and we will visit the first 6/7. I say the first 6 because we recognize the first 6 African-American males and females, but in the first 6 females, there were actually 2 that came on at the same time, so that made 7. So we're gonna see you again later on with the first 6/7 African-American females. So I know that you all have that sisterhood that's pretty tight. And I'm kind of jealous of that. But I know that had to be a high note for you. But outside of that, what else?
Whatever don't break you, make you stronger. And because of that, I think I'm stronger. I know I'm stronger. Probably too strong because I'm a no-nonsense type person. But I had to be. And like I said, I love it. I've learned from it. And the good thing about it is those who wanted to see me leave, I outlast them. That's the good part. Those who wanted me to leave, I outlast them. Even when they made me go to a psychiatrist and bring a note back, I outlast them. For one reason or another, either they resigned or they were terminated. Whatever. I did my full 42 years and 2 months.
Again, congratulations. You are a legend. No one can ever take that away from you. You have earned that right. We honor and recognize you today for all of your accomplishments. And we look forward to seeing you when you come back with the first 6.
It'll be more positive.
Again, congratulations, and we will see you on the next one. you.